How you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, yeah. It's a nice, really nice weather these days, I have to say. Hey, so, in our previous videos, we talked about a lot of things. What we could do, recycling, we talk about cows, we're talking about wind and solar. But they keep coming up with this term about how climate change is an existential threat to humanity, to the human population. It's an existential threat. What do you think that means exactly, existential threat?
It means we're all supposed to do our part so that the sum of everybody doing it will contribute to a better end result, I think.
Well, that's the best explanation I've heard, because you're a college grad and stuff. They probably talked a lot about existentialism in college and stuff. Maybe what they mean to say, because again, the individual. How do you force all these individuals to act as a group to solve a problem? That's not really existentialism, but anyway, existentialism is about the individual and the truth that they have before them, and to make their choices and live with their consequences. So if one person decides, well, I'm doing this to solve the problem, the other person says, I'm doing something else. Well, that's okay under existentialism, okay, but that's not how they're trying to solve the problem. They're trying to say, let's reduce this by so much percentage for everybody. Everybody's got to do this. And so that's not, so anyway, I think, again, it's a confusing term for me. It bothers me when people just throw that term around, because existentialism is just a philosophy. It's almost like a theism, it has nothing to do with God, but that there's no good or evil, but that the individual is responsible to make wise choices for himself or herself, and to suffer those consequences, but use the best judgment and things like that. So there's no, your truth is different from my truth, and et cetera. So it's all about the individual responsibilities, which seems like it doesn't quite fit into the definition of existential threat for climate change, when they're trying to take away and force everybody to conform to some either legal means or other regulations, so that we're addressing climate change. So anyway, my takeaway is from you is that we should all, as individuals, try to contribute to that so we make it better, make the human condition better. Is that kind of what they're saying?
Yeah, I think they want us to do our part. It's just that you got to be reasonable about it, because not everyone can do the same as some people will be able to contribute more than others. And only certain countries will do more than others. It's kind of hard to make it an even playing field where everybody is contributing the same. I mean, because here in the United States we have it pretty good, making ends meet. But other places of the world, I mean, they're more concerned with just having enough to eat for the next day, or raising their family and stuff like that. So climate change is the last thing on their mind.
Well, yeah, I mean, even in this country, there's a lot of poor people. And they're not worried about climate change either. They're worried about how they get their next meal. So there's a lot of that, even in a rich country like ours. So let's just say that they mean that it's a top priority. Is that what they're trying to say, you think? That climate change we should address climate change as the top priority.
It certainly seems like that.
Okay, well, that's probably what they should say. Okay, so let's say it's the top priority. All right. Existentialism, or whatever. It's of utmost concern. All right. So if that's really the case, okay, are we doing the right things to solve that problem? Then, if it's number one, which is not for the common, you just said it's not for the common person. It's not number one on their mind. Okay, it's maybe way down on the list. But if it's the top of the mind of our government, or our governments, our worldwide governments, and to try to save everybody, then are we doing the right things to address that? How are we gonna address this existential threat?
Well, most of the emissions come from either power or transportation.
Bing, yeah.
So I mean, even if a lot of us try to reduce our transportation, there's always going to be a need for people to get around.
Right.
So I don't really see a way to solve that problem unless you make clean fuel. I think we're always going to need fuel. I know they're doing battery-powered vehicles. I don't think that's going to solve the problem.
All right, so like we talked about cows before, okay? they have this big thing. Oh, let's attack the cow industry, which isn't going to do it. Let's attack the gas stove industry, which isn't going to. These are all things that aren't going to make much of a difference. Okay, you just mentioned it though. Energy for electricity and transportation is almost 3/4 of what produce greenhouse gases, man-made greenhouse gases. Okay, so we need to tackle that part of it. And if we can tackle that part of it without making people suffer more and get more poor and have less food to eat, okay, and less water to drink, and less, ways to get around for their jobs, okay, then that's the ideal thing. So if it's really if it's really important, if it's of utmost importance and of utmost concern, we need to tackle that sector, the energy sector, okay? Produce some type of non-greenhouse gas emitting energy to produce electricity. That's really what we need, right?
And we need it all the time. We need it 24/7. We need it 24/7.
Okay, what is that? Okay, right now, it's the only thing that we got doing that right now is nuclear power. Okay, because you talk about solar and wind. Those don't emit greenhouse gases. Now we can talk about life cycle and all that, but okay, to make them and everything, yeah. Okay, taking that aside, while they're operating, they don't produce any greenhouse gases like a natural gas plant would, right? But they're not reliable 24/7, right? I mean, they don't operate at night, the solar panels, and there's not enough storage for the electricity from the solar panels produced in the daytime to compensate at night. So that's not really a reliable all the time, 365 days a year type of solution, is it?
No, I wouldn't think it would be. And then in addition, it takes up a lot of land. So if you're wanting to do a lot in the United States, you're going to have a lot more land usage.
Yeah.
And you're going to expect the rest of the world to do the same thing. And do
try doing that in Hong Kong
somewhere. All this land that people need already and stuff, so.
Yeah. I guess you could put them on top of buildings, but it's still not going to be enough. And the wind also takes up a lot of land, and there's an environmental hazard there as well. And they're also not as reliable. They're more reliable maybe than solar because they can operate 24/7, but you got to put them in, again, it's weather dependent. And during extreme weather conditions, they may not operate very well or not at all. So that's a problem too. Then we go back to our, we got biomass plants, which are something that's only about 3% of the energy production we have. We have hydro electricity, which is also good. That's about 6 or 7% production. So, but let's go back to nuclear. Nuclear really is the only thing right now that we could produce enough electricity to increase our electricity capacity or substitute it with some of the coal plants and natural gas plants that would produce 24/7, 365 days a year power. And that's it. That's what we got. That's the only one, other than like I said, some of those hydro and biomass ones. But again,
so if they were really concerned about solving the problem, that's really the only way to do it. I mean, that's like, Like if it's such a threat, this existential threat, I mean, we can do all these other small things, but the only way to really solve the problem is to go nuclear,
I mean, that's it. You're right. So if it's that, like you said, if it's that big of a threat, then we'd be doing that. But we're not doing that. Why do you think we're not doing that?
Well, a couple things. I think it's very expensive to make these nuclear plants. Is what they say.
But cost should be no object if it's the top concern, right? So
because you're spending all this trillions of dollars on other things. I mean, you need. It would take less than $1 trillion probably to do.
Well, which means to me that if they're not doing that, then they're not really saying it's the top priority. Then that's what they're telling me. Yeah. They're telling me one thing, but they're not acting like it's the top threat. So I'm not sure if I can take them seriously enough yet if they're not willing to take a risk over nuclear power.
That's a good point. Yeah, I can see what you're saying and stuff.
I mean, logically speaking, existentially speaking.
Existentially speaking, yeah.
Well said, brother. Well said. Yeah. All right, let's end there. Well, until next time.
All right.